This is My Taste is Better Than Yours, the manga podcast where Guardian Enzel and I, Samu, discuss some of our favourite series and figure out, is my taste better than yours?
Hey again, everybody. It's your old pal Guardian Enzo coming to you as always from Lost in Anime. I should say My Taste Towers here in beautiful uptown Kyoto, with another very special episode of My Taste is Better Than Yours. It's our year end, year in review, manga year in review, best manga of 24, trends, all that kind of good stuff. On my website, I do, and on YouTube, of course, we do the top 10 countdown series of the year. I do an Oscars of best in anime. And now I get to do that for manga too with my co-host Samu. So that's very exciting. Samu, how you doing today?
I'm doing good. This is
Very well.
another special episode that I'm really interested. I'm really looking forward to
Mm.
discussing the best of
Yeah, me,
2024.
me, me too. We did one specific. We're doing two. We're doing one specifically on Shonen Jump, but then this is a more general manga. The year in manga really is what it is. We're going to talk about a bunch of categories, and just look back on the year and look forward to. I think how I would phrase it is, how do we think this year will? What does it say about what we can expect in the coming year and the coming years in manga? So a very interesting topic. Uh, we'll kick it off with the best new manga published in 2024, and I'm gonna go first here. And the way I want us to do this is we're gonna pick our top pick in every category, but I want us to be able to briefly highlight other series as well. So if we have honorable mentions or whatever, I think that's fine. I'm gonna start with the best new manga published in 2024. My pick is the best new manga ended in 2024, Psych House. That's my pick for the best manga started in 2024 by Omusuke Kobayashi, and it's already canceled. So it ran for like under 20 chapters in Jump, and never had a chance, but I think it's a wonderful series. I think I really love it. I think it's a shame it didn't, even though I didn't expect it to be a hit. It's a shame it didn't at least do well enough to stick around for a while. Charming and fun and clever, and just thoroughly lovable. Impossible for me to read a chapter without smiling. So the late lamented Psych House, which was the premiere series. So hopefully the next one he comes out with is going to be a bigger hit. In Jump, especially, first series tend not to be big hits. So it's not a shock in that sense. It's not a disaster. It's not a tragedy. It's just a little sad. My runner up in this category is Itchy the Witch, which we may hear a little bit more about very shortly. So, Samu, why don't you tell us your best new manga published in 2024?
Well, my pick is going to be Ichi the Witch. I will say I have read less new series published that started publishing this year, other than Weekly Shonen Jump, obviously. So this was a tougher category than maybe it would have been in previous years, because I've focused mainly on catching up on older completed series that I was keen on. But I think Ichi the Witch just has so much potential. We mentioned it in our last episode that we think it could be one of the next big things in the magazine. I just think it's really charming, and it's by two very acclaimed authors that I'm glad that they're in Weekly Shonen Jump producing that sort of series. If I was going to give an honorable mention, and a series that actually maybe would be my pick if there was more than one chapter translated, it would be Strand. Um,
Yeah.
I think that first chapter had me totally like hooked, and I was prepared to read that weekly, but unfortunately, we've not been able to experience that yet.
I
So
want
that
just want to say I loved that first chapter too. I thought it was great. And if somebody had been translating that, I would still be reading it for sure.
yeah, I think that had a lot of potential. So that could have been my answer, in a different reality, I think.
Hmm. Tough to do that based on one chapter though.
Exactly, I know. I'll jump into the next category then, which is best manga that ended or that finished in 2024. My pick is going to be Green Green Greens. That
Mm.
was another new title that did get cancelled in Weekly Shonen Jump, but it was just so good. Great character writing. The dynamics were on point. It's unfortunate that it was cancelled, especially since compared to Psych House, it did a little bit better. I could totally envision a future where this was a longer running series, and I would, yeah, it could have been one of my favorites for the year as well if it was given more time. So Enzo, I think maybe you've got a few that you liked that did end in 2024.
Yeah,
what's your pick?
I'm gonna say Boku no Hero Academia just because it was really an event. This series it's an important series historically speaking, in Jump and generally, an international hit, uh, and a deserving foundational piece for Weekly Shonen Jump and for Shonen Manga. And it ended, I think it ended quite well. Even if it hadn't ended quite well, which some people think, which I disagree with, it's still the best manga that finished. It's not the best ending. So I'm going to say Boku no Hero Academia. My two honorable mentions in this category are two less well-known series, but ones that I really, really liked. I'm in love with The Older Girl Next Door, which is by the same mangaka as Megane Wasareta, that series, which got a weird anime, which was actually pretty good, from that studio that does the weird anime. You know the one I'm talking about. Go Hands. But I'm in Love with the Older Girl Next Door was a really cute and charming series about a younger teenager who was in love with his slightly older neighbor who was a huge movie fan. And it was great as a charming, unlikely romance, and also just as a love letter to the movies. And since I love the movies as much as I do, I really appreciated that part of it. And then Me and My Gangster Neighbor, which was a manga by the author of Romantic Killer, which oddly enough got a Netflix anime adaptation. I liked Romantic Killer. I think Me and My Gangster Neighbor was much better, and it does commit what to me a cardinal sin, which is the cuddly yakuza myth. But in spite of that, I still think it's great. I really love that series. Extremely charming. But I can't argue with Green Green Greens. I'll tell you that. That's a great choice. Okay, so we've had best new, best finished. Naturally, our third category then is going to be the best ongoing manga based on 2024 chapters. So in other words, best manga which gave us the best chapters this year. And I'm going to go with, probably to no one's surprise, Boku no Kokoro no Yabayatsu, The Dangers in My Heart, which
That's not
is
surprising.
one that I've been hyping since no one had heard of it. Uh, I've been saying from the beginning would become a big hit when it became an anime. It became a big hit when it was starting to become a big hit already. Then the anime, it really took off. Now it got a light novel version. It's getting a movie next year. It's, to me, the best rom-com in current manga by a safe margin, and it, before it's finished, may be the best rom-com in manga that I've read. It certainly is going to be on the short list. And they'd had some incredible chapters this year, going through a phenomenally great arc now. The comprehensive adolescent romance series, hilariously funny, sad, moving, just a phenomenal, just a great series. And the anime that got, it wasn't a it wasn't an absolutely top of the line anime adaptation, but it was really good, and it got a lot of the little things right, and it really did help the anime take off in popularity, or the manga take off, which I sincerely hoped it would. And my runner-up in this category, I've got two: Hiro Yasumi, which we've already done a show about, just a wonderful slice of life seinen manga, and Otayome Gitari, which is a pretty big hit and continues to be a pretty big hit. Has had not a whisper of an anime adaptation, I suspect, because anime is terrified at trying to do Mori Karu's art, which is extremely intimidating prospect for any animator to try to tackle. So those would be my two runners up. And turning it over to you, Samu, best ongoing manga 2024.
This is another one that I mentioned in our last episode. for me, it's Akane Banashi. Not very surprising, like Wise with You and Bokuyaba. Just I thought again this was his best year of chapters that it gave us. We're just concluding now an amazing flashback arc, and I thought we got really good content for Akane herself and a nice shake up in the series that was quite dramatic and has me genuinely really, really excited for 2025. So, unless there is an incredible surge in another series, I also wouldn't be surprised if this ends up being my pick for next year as well. Though it is one that I would throw out there as well is Hunter x Hunter. This recent batch that we've got, I love the Succession Contest arc, and any time where Hunter x Hunter is publishing weekly is when, in my opinion, the magazine is at its peak.
Yeah, I almost feel like you could almost always say Hunter x Hunter is the best. As you said, anytime it's publishing, you could always pick Hunter x Hunter as the best,
Yeah.
and you'd be in pretty safe territory there.
I'll move on to the next one then, which is the best manga that we discovered or we started reading in 2024. So this could be something beyond publishing in 2024. And like I did say, I have read a lot more series that are older, that were on my ever-long reading list. And one of them that really stuck out with me was Barefoot Gen. Very
Mm.
early Weekly Shonen Jump title that then changed magazines multiple times, went on for decades, and was this super passionate depiction of World War II and post World War II Hiroshima through the eyes of this boy, who suffered all these horrible things, which were directly influenced by what happened with the author. Yeah, I just think there aren't any other manga quite like it. I don't know how many manga today would be allowed to go into the detail that it does. It's pretty relentless in its depiction of all sides, and yeah, I cried multiple times, especially at the end of the first volume. I'm usually more of a crier if it's anime, but this was one that just hit me on an insane level. Yeah, Barefoot Again, a true classic. Another more recent series was Film Night. That would be my shout out as well. It started in 2020. That's a very cool sci-fi series that I may mention again shortly. So, Enzo,
Mm.
what was the best manga that you discovered?
Yeah, I'm gonna pick Toge Oni. English title is Primal Gods in Ancient Times. Mangaka is Surubuchi Kenji, and it's a wonderful fantasy about kind of like the Shinto version of Japan in like starting around the Heian era, going way back towards early Warring States era, um, with again lots of gods and lots of legendary Shinto figures who we know very well. About two kids who end up traveling with a priest, Shinto priest, who's a kind of a great kind of a wisecracking guy with a heart of gold. Um, it's this series actually came to my attention because Mizukami Satoshi, the author of Sengoku Yoko and Spirit Circle and Biscuit Hammer, who I consider to be one of the greatest mangaka of the modern era, said, quote, I'm extremely jealous of this series when I read it. And as soon as I read that, I was like, okay, that caught my attention. And I started reading it and I was like, immediately, this, I absolutely love this. This is so good. Um, and the other, my runner up in that category would probably be The Bugle Call, which is another series that I picked up on a mangaka recommendation. This time it was the author Yukimura, the author of Vinland Saga, and he said this is one to keep an eye on. I really enjoy it, and I started reading it, and it's about a young boy who has sort of a magical. There's people in this world who have these magical abilities, which are sort of exemplified by these horns that they have on their heads. And his is that he can control reality through the music he plays on his trumpet. his bugle, rather, I should say, not a trumpet, his bugle. And but he just wants to be a musician, but he ends up being a tool of the military, and it has a lot of pacifist elements to it that it shares with Vinland Saga in that sense. Author on that one is Tomori Higoro is the artist, and Sora Mozuku is the writer. And I could see that potentially being a pretty successful anime if anyone ever decided to make an anime out of it. But the manga is still kind of undiscovered. Uh, those would be my two. Okay, next category. Then we go into newcomer manga to look out for. And my criteria for this category was basically first serialized manga this year. I mean, if they had a one shot or something in 22 or 23, I think, okay, I'm still going to call that a newcomer. So I restricted myself to mangaka who had their first serialized series this year. My pick in this category is Kobayashi Omosuke with Psych House, which was I briefly mentioned earlier, was my pick in the best new manga that published this year. All too briefly in the magazine for maybe 20 chapters. Really charming, really wonderful. But you know, for a first series in Weekly Shonen Jump, not a surprise that it would fail. My backup is in the same vein than Hayashi Yoshihiko, who did Mama Yu Yu, also a first series which failed in Weekly Shonen Jump, which I think shows enormous potential, both in terms of the art and the writing. So that's another one I would keep an eye on. Who's your pick in the newcomer mangaka category, Samu?
Okay, I'm going quite deep. I'm going for mangaka who hasn't yet had a serialization but has a couple one shots, and one of which came out this year called Isemono Sagashi. This is by Mijino Muji. Um,
Hmm.
that was probably one of my favorite one shots of Weekly Shonen Jump as well, and it was very much like Weekly Shonen Jump's answer to Mushishi. It's about interesting main character and his relationship with dispelling spirits. The
Hmm.
art leaned into the action more, and the character designs were just immaculate, very sharp and animalistic. And that's someone who I wouldn't be surprised if they do get a proper serialization, if not in 2025, then 2026. And yeah,
Interesting.
the artwork alone, just for a one shot, I'm totally invested.
Mujina Muji.
Mujina Muji.
Mujina Muji Mushishi.
Mujina, yeah.
Okay.
Okay, we've done newcomers. I'm gonna go to series that are up and comers as well. So manga that you should keep an eye on before it does blow up eventually. I didn't limit myself to just this year. I've picked. I'm going to mention a couple series that have been out for a little while and seem to be growing in steam, and I think have potential to blow up down the line. My two honorable mentions are both Jump Square titles, and they're both Exorcist series, funnily enough, which is Phantom Busters and Gokura Kugai. The latter does get translated on Weekly Shonen Jump on Viz Manga. I haven't read enough of it to give a full opinion, but it seems that seems to be like a very well liked battle square title at the moment, with a fun duo, the like older, cooler female character and the like spunky younger the boy, that dynamic that they have. And then the other one, which is a series I might read when there's more to it, but from what I've seen, people seem to really, really be resonating with it, and it's getting a decent boost from its first volume in Japan. That's Phantom Busters, which is
Hmm.
lower key in terms of the extra stuff. It's very much um, a couple of boys being boys at school, and they're all goofs and they're silly, and it plays into that dynamic of, I think, maybe just what if teenage boys were given this power and these duties. And yeah, again, it's not one that I've read enough to fully go into detail about, but I have an inkling that that might be something that will take off. One that I am reading though, however, that's ongoing is Firefly Wedding, which is a Josei title. Shocker that that's what I'm reading. This blew up from the first volume as well. It feeds it, like plays into that dynamic of potentially fucked up male lead who's an assassin and has this horrible personality, and this girl, this woman who is trying to navigate that relationship she has with him while he's protecting her from her family betraying her. It's a fantasy series and it can be quite grim at times, but it definitely plays into the romance a lot. Um, yeah, I another series I do love is Yakuza Fiance, and I think that's a similar series that scratches that same itch that people have. And
Hmm.
yeah, I think it's a great dynamic. Whether it's morally correct or not, it's just fascinating to read. So that's one that I think will only continue to get more popular as the
Okay.
years go on. And then Enzo, up
Oh,
and comer. What are your
up
pick?
and comer manga award. I think something of our it's kind of like the baby brother of the next big thing award. It's not necessarily the next big thing, but the next breakout. I think I could easily say Ichi the Witch here, but I feel like we've already given that one a lot of oxygen. So I'm going to say Spacewalking with You, which is by Inuhiko Doronoda. And this one has already gotten a ton of buzz, a ton of attention. It recently won the Manga Sugoi Award, which is a fairly big deal given that that has a pretty big voter base in it. It's already it's it's 3 volumes and it's already gotten a lot of buzz, and it's actually doing pretty well in sales too. Um, for a newer magazine, and it's a sign-in, and sign-in have a tougher time breaking through being huge hits. I think this one has a chance to do that. It's about an autistic boy, although they never use that word, who goes up against a boy, kind of a Yankee type who's seen as a bad boy, but it's largely because he has a learning disability, which makes him struggle in school. He's bright, but he has a learning disability. It makes him struggle at school with work, and they sort of bond in this unlikely partnership, and they end up being in the astronomy club because the autistic boy has a keen interest in stargazing, and he kind of draws the other boy into it. I kind of feel like this is the summer Hikaru died a year earlier. Like I knew this time last year, Summer Hikaru died was going to become a bust out and a big hit and get an anime, and it has all those things are happening, and I kind of feel like that's where we are with Spacewalking with You. So when we talk in a year, I feel like this is one of the ones we're going to say, wow, that was a big year for that series. And I
And
read a few
winning
chapters of it, and I have to say I really like it.
and winning the Manga Taisho Award. Yeah, that's super
Yeah,
impressive.
yeah, yeah. So it definitely. Okay. And I'm gonna let you take 2 categories in a row, Samu, because I feel like I jumped it, but we're in a good category. We're in a good time in the discussion for it. Why don't you tell us your favorite one shots of 2024? Because I
Yeah,
haven't read any run shots that made enough of an impression on me. If it had been 2023, I would have had a couple picks for it, but this year nothing really made much of an impression on me, so I wouldn't feel right voting. I'm going to leave this category for you to solo.
sure. Yeah, there's been a lot of weekly show. I'm gonna use Weekly Shonen Jump again, just because there was a lot of one shots translated this year, which doesn't always happen. Um, the Isemono Sagashi would be a recommendation. That's the one I talked about with Muji no Muji. Um, we got Haiku Side Story from the point of view of Kai Nobuyuki, which ties into the latest film, adds a new perspective, which I think was just a lot of fun, even if not super serious. But my favorite one shot of the year would be Memento and Kowloon by Raya Machida. That's another relative newcomer that plays with this idea of Kowloon and the mystery of it, and plays with that vibe in a really cool way. That's definitely that's another newbie mangaka that I feel like, along with Mujina Miji, could get serialized in the magazine quite soon, and I'd be very, very, very down to see what they can produce.
Interesting.
Okay, my pick for the next category, which is underappreciated gem of 2024, um, something that just appeals to my taste and I think needs more of an audience than it has, is Full Night, which I mentioned as a series I discovered this year. This is to me a really, really cool concept for a sci-fi series. It's set in the future in Japan where clouds cover the sky, so there's no sunlight, which kills off plants and reduces the oxygen in the world. And the way that the population has accommodated to that is they've developed this industry where they turn people into plants. They basically offer them money to their families in order to do that. But they turn into these like grotesque, half alive creatures that are like built into the streets and the environment, and it explores the ethics of that sort of industry that a lot of the main characters are part of. It's really fascinating. It focuses on a lot of stories of characters, how they get into that situation, and then you see these really cool like side plots where in a world where growing plants and trees is such a scarce luxury that, for example, there's this underground operation of like wooden tables that are made from people who um, turn into plants, and that again explores the cruelty of how people exploit that system that's meant to be used for survivability. And I think this series it had a good shift as well this year in the recent chapters, where the iceberg that we thought was the entire series expand the scope. So yeah, it's got a good run still left. I would love to see it get an anime. I believe it could maybe even
Hmm.
get two cores with the material up until that big revelation. Um, but yeah, I love things that I say tickle my brain. This just like it's such a fascinating concept and one of my definitely one of the gems of. I don't know if you're familiar with it, Enzo, but
Yeah, I
I think
hadn't
you
been
might be
until I
keen.
saw. Yeah, you've mentioned it a couple of categories, and I saw that, and I'm like, this looks interesting, and it does look interesting to me. I hadn't when you said the title, I knew the title, I had heard the title, but I
Yeah,
wouldn't have recognized it. I couldn't pick it out of a lineup if I saw the cover. So yeah, it looks very interesting actually. Kind of has a little bit of a gotcha, kind of a aura to
mm,
it in looking at it from a distance.
yeah,
But we may talk about that series before we're done. But yeah, I would definitely be interested in checking that out for sure. It sounds like it's made quite an impression on you.
yeah.
Uh, my picks in this category, my runner-up is Toge Oni, which we've already talked about. It's not, it is underappreciated. It should be a massive hit, and it's not, but it is underappreciated. I'm going to go with Green Green Greens as my top pick. I've already kind of called out Psych House. Now I'm going to talk about Green Green Greens, which it's not the first mention. You mentioned it in the best manga that finished. It's a great sports manga with just a great manga about kids and kids being kids and their insecurities. And I was really wonderful, and I wish it had been a big hit for Shonen Jump. Unlike Psych House, I think if they had stuck with Green Green Greens a little longer, I think it would have had a chance to take off. I really do. I think they cut it too soon. Um, but it's a cutthroat world at Weekly Shonen Jump. It's the toughest gig in the business, and so it didn't do terribly, but it didn't do well enough. And Sayonara Green Green Green. So that's my pick in the underappreciated gem of 2024. Now we're going to move on to the best character of 2024. I will go first on this one, of course. And my pick, best character of 2024, is Ichikawa Kyotaro, Boku no Kokoro no Yabayatsu, Boku Yaba. Again, this will surprise no one who knows me, knows my taste, but I think if we were going best male lead, best female lead, I think Yamada Anna would probably be my favorite in that category as well. But the best character in manga currently, in my opinion, period, is Ichikawa Kyotaro. He's just a really fascinating, complicated uh, snapshot of that strange and terrifying and exhilarating period in our life when we're not a child and we're not an adult and everything is changing and we're a mix of insecurity and arrogance, and he's a remarkable creation, an avatar of the author Norio Sasaki. Even though she's a woman, she's made it very clear that Kyotaro, or Ichi as most of us call him, is really her insecurities and her passions, and he really represents her. She's a wonderful writer. It's a wonderful series, and he's the heart of the series for me, for sure. Ichikawa Kyotaro. That's my pick for character of the year. And he had a great year in 2024. Chapters in 2024, incredible growth for him, incredible struggles for him. Just a fantastic year for that character, although they've all been good. Who's your pick?
I mean, just like you'll take any chance to gush about Ichikawa. I will do the same with Yoshino. Now that you're familiar with her, clearly you don't feel the same level of love that I do. This is Yoshino Some from Yakuza Fiancé, raised by Taninga Ie. I've been reading the manga for a few years now, and she just, in the same way that Akane is very me coded from Akane Banashi, Yoshino is so me coded.
Yep.
Um, my favorite character of all time, my favorite fictional character is Sansa Stark.
Sansa Stark.
Yep, yep. I see shades of uh, Sansa and Yoshino. Sansa is definitely much softer and takes longer for having her transition of her character arc, whereas Yoshino plays into, in a similar way, Yoshino plays into the dangerous dynamics of the world around her. She jumps straight into it, and for a while she's not. She thinks she's more capable at handling than she is, but seeing the way she struggles, but also the way that she adapts on the job and embraces that harsher side of herself when it comes to her lover and her family and her father and all the politics that play into the Yakuza storyline. I just think I'm just always compelled by the choices she makes, whether they be correct or dangerous. She's just a lot of fun. From watching the anime, I don't know. It is strange when you see an adaptation; it just doesn't match with your expectation.
Mm.
Like for example, even her voice is kind of different than I imagined, even though it's part of her character that she has that very thick accent. Um,
Yeah. Can't say
yeah,
that.
I don't know. That was just a case where I wasn't as taken by the anime, though I know that's your only familiarity with it as well.
Yeah, it is. And I think from what I've heard, it's not like a stellar adaptation generally. I like her for the record. I don't dislike Yoshino. I do think she's probably the most interesting character in the series. What I like about her is you're never quite sure whether she's incredibly smart or incredibly stupid. And at least that's my take on her. The decisions, as you say, the decisions she make, the choices she make, she's clearly very powerful and self confident and but reckless. And like I said, the interesting thing for me about her and the series is this kind of dichotomy of like, wait a minute, is she really really smart, or is she really really dumb, or is she both? And I think the answer is not quite clear, at least at the point of the story where the anime is at right now. So I think it is interesting to watch that play out.
It's similar to the other series I flagged earlier, which was Firefly Wedding. That dynamic that Yoshino has with Kirishima is fascinating because she knows the dangers that she's putting herself in, and you could argue that the depiction of it is kind of gross in some ways, but then there's also that romance, or I don't know if romance is the right word, but the attraction that she gets in that situation, that power dynamic that she has over someone that is so powerful, but like some crazed animal, he could turn at any moment, and I think that is what I find compelling about that pairing. I don't know if I say if I'd ship them or anything, but um, no matter how morally grain fucked up it is, I love that sort of dynamic like that in Firefly Wedding. Um, I'll jump into the next one, and this is the last time I'm going to
Okay.
mention this series. This is best artwork. The third time mentioning is Full Night. Um, Another reason I didn't touch on it, but another reason I really love the series is how cinematic it is. Now, I think that is an easy term to throw around because it can be quite easy to imagine how something would be depicted on screen. But to me, it almost feels like a lot of the time it's like storyboards, and you see very little movements between the character from moment to moment, and it catches the drama in what a small movement across a double page spread achieves in the series. So yeah, I love the character designs, but that's one where the paneling alone is one that is it's like a breeze. Like reading it, it just glides over you. It's not super dialogue heavy, but the action and the artwork is really really on point. So I think I could have predicted what your answer is going to be, Enzo. But go
Mm.
for it. What's your favorite artwork of the series?
I will tell you that if Vagabond were currently in serialization,
Yeah,
and we've gotten vague teases that at least it's on the table at some point, but I'll believe it when I see it, then it would have been a tough choice. Since it's not, it's on perma hiatus, and until it's on perma hiatus, I consider it finished until it's not on hiatus anymore. So I have to pick Otoyome Gitari by Morikaru, which is the artwork to me in that series is just it's beyond sublime. It's truly beautiful. Uh, the work she does with landscapes, with animals, especially cats, but also horses, and she draws beautiful women, beautiful men, the you know the Caucasus Mountains in all their glory, all the way ranging from Victorian England, which she has a lot of experience in, of course, to the Middle East. It's just stunning. It's just incredibly beautiful art. She did a they had a recently they had a touring exhibition of her artwork, and it was at the Kyoto International Manga Museum, and it was just a thrill just to experience it. As I mentioned, uh, I think this series should have an anime. It's incredibly popular, but it
it's difficult.
I really honestly feel like it's like, no, we can't do it. It's too much. I
It's
think that's
almost.
one of the reasons. I
I was
think
gonna,
that's one of the reasons. I'll let you finish in a second. I think that's one
okay.
of the reasons no one has approached Takehiko Inoue about Vagabond. Is I think there's a suspicion that the artwork he does in that series is so over the edge that there's no way you could do it justice. I'd love to see someone try to do it justice. I'd love to see someone try to do this justice. Somebody like Wit or Kinema Citrus, but it wouldn't be easy, that's for sure. What were you going to say? I'm sorry.
I was just going to say it's one of those series where you almost feel guilty that you don't spend as much time looking at the pages, the detail that you get given.
Yeah,
Like you should
yeah.
probably read each chapter for like an hour to properly take it in.
And since she only does like 8 chapters a year, it wouldn't be that hard to do it.
Yeah,
Um, but considering how much detail that goes into the artwork, I'm not surprised she's not able to do more chapters than that. It's only fitting.
yeah.
Okay, next category, and this is a big one. Biggest trend in manga for 2024. Obviously, this is totally subjective, but then these are all totally subjective, so there's nothing wrong with that. My pick is, and I actually like one of the ones you picked, and I might have poached it if I thought of it first, but I'm going to leave it for you. My pick is isekai shifting from light novel, or I wouldn't even say shifting because, of course, light novels are still hip deep in it too, but isekai porting over from light novels to manga. It's not surprising. Um, I won't pretend to be a neutral on this. There are great isekai series. I mean, hell, you could make an argument that Inuyasha and Distant Neighborhood are isekai series, but for the most part, isekai light novels are a way for writers of minimal talent to make a buck. It doesn't, the bar is very low. You just need to be able to string 3 words together and write a title that's longer than the first chapter. If you can do that, you can do an isekai light novel. So inevitably, when there's a way to make a successful commercial product without much talent being necessary to pull it off, that's going to find its way to other areas, and so it's only natural that manga has become more infected with isekai, and so it's a logical trend. I think we've seen it really accelerate though, and we're at the point now where we're starting to see a lot of isekai manga get adapted into anime, and I think that's the way you can tell that it's really taken hold. Is now we're starting to see isekai manga become a big part of the anime schedule. Like there's a whole bunch of isekai manga on the winter schedule for 2025,
Oh, really?
way more than I've ever seen for in any season of isekai manga. So when you consider that isekai light novels aren't going anywhere, um, manga is such a huge medium, and there's so many hundreds of titles in serialization at any given time. that having a bunch of isekai manga is not that big a problem. But in anime, where it's a much smaller ecosystem, to have a bunch of isekai manga now turning into anime on top of the isekai light novels that are turning into anime, I think it is a much bigger problem. So I consider that the biggest trend in manga and not one that encourages me. With that, though, I think I'll turn it over to you and hopefully for a less depressing trend that you see happening.
Isekais are a funny one. I'm also not a fan of 95% of them. I'm not really big on light novels either. It is interesting though. Like, Isekai for the past, I don't know, let's say 10 years or so, that has been maybe the most dominant trend, at least in anime. And like you say, it's bleeding into manga more now. I think it's funny when you compare, maybe the trend before that was these magic high schools where there is that equally bland main character and like the harem girls all around them. I feel like those were in abundance maybe the start of the 2010s. Um, yeah, it's just funny how trends change. And when you consider the isekai, if you want to go back to like the 90s, a lot of shoujo were isekai, and I think isekai just had a completely different meaning to it as well. My picks for the biggest trends. An easy one that I'm not going to use is just Exorcist, especially in Weekly Shonen Jump and also Jump Plus. Just Exorcist series are just everywhere. It's like the go-to format for a battle manga, and it's some of them are good, and then but because there are so many, it can really it reduces the amount of quality I think that you get from them. Another pick maybe I would have said if we were talking last year is Assassins and Hitmen. Definitely building off of and trying to replicate the success of Spy Family. Um, Other series you have like Sakamoto Days and Kill Blue and Shinobi Undercover, which are Weekly Shonen Jump, and then Jump Plus titles like Kindergarten Wars and Marriage Toxin. Feels like Shueisha in particular, they are trying to build off of that. And I think generally it does work. That seems to be something that people are enjoying right now. But if I was to look ahead, as well as like what's building up in 2024 and going into 2025, I feel like we're getting a lot of magician, like witch, wizard series. Uh, just to name a few, we've got Ichi the Witch, obviously, which we shouted out a few times. And Weekly Shonen Sunday from Tanabe Yellow, she's returned with Kaihen Wizards, which I didn't take to as much as I hoped I would because I quite like her. We have Witch Watch and Atelier. They're getting animes next year, and there's other ones that I feel like are up and coming that maybe I don't even know about. But things like a daily report about my witch senpai that seems to be getting a lot of buzz with each volume that comes out. So yeah, I think we're getting a lot of magicians, wizards, some like magic centric series. That's my take on the biggest trend at the moment.
Yeah, and the only thing I would say, I think that is a trend, and I think that Itchy the Witch could accelerate it because I think Itchy the Witch is going to appeal to a segment of the audience that maybe is not necessarily normally in the witch manga, witch anime demographic. So I think I could see Itchy the Witch expanding or accelerating that trend for sure.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, I'm going to jump over to the next category, which I feel like you will have more experience with, but I have watched a few adaptations this year, so we're going to discuss which manga got the best adaptation in 2024.
Hmm.
Now, my honorable mention would be Bleach, the third core of the Thousand Year Blood War, the conflict, just because this core in particular has utilized a lot of new material from the manga that kind of need to be supplemented and add additional context to things that came from TT Kubo. I think it's still getting the best adaptation in terms of how the anime is treated for its entire run. I can't complain much. I'm a massive Bleach fan. Bleach is getting its flowers at the moment, and I'm even more excited to see how they wrap up maybe some of the mistakes from the final core. But my other pick, again, I haven't watched too many anime this year, but one that I made an effort to watch because it resonated with me a lot more than the manga did, which I think is what an adaptation, its best case, can do, is The Elusive Samurai. I know you think there's beauty to the manga artwork from Yatsui. I feel different about it, but I do think that the anime has brought out a whole new side to the flow, and it's tidied up the weirdness in the character designs and the animation. Often, not every time, there's some clunky CGI horses, but I think it got a stellar adaptation that for how well for how good the series is performing in the magazine, which is fairly well. It's in the middle somewhere. I think it got best case scenario
Hmm.
adaptation. Uh, yeah, I think maybe that's one you'll probably shout out as well.
Yep. My top pick, in fact, is The Elusive Samurai, and I do think it got a much better adaptation than I was worried it was going to get. Because, as you said, it's not a top performer; it's kind of a mid performer, but it does have a mangaka who's had three successful series with no failures, which kind of puts him in pretty heady company. So I think that might have had something to do with it. And I, for many of the reasons that you called out, it captures it. An anime can't just be a literal, or a great adaptation can't just be just a panel for panel adaptation, because anime can do things manga can't do, and manga can do things anime can't do. And so what it did was capture what is brilliant about the manga, but change it in a way to communicate kind of the same vibe, but using the anime tools at its disposal. It's really imaginative and creative and clever, and it has some incredibly, almost, I would say, almost surrealistic visual sequences, almost psychedelic, in fact. I do think that Matsui's artwork is very beautiful. I think some of it's like classic Japanese art almost. But it's flat. His art tends to have a very two-dimensional look to it, and so that wouldn't have worked unless you had an incredibly brilliant staff trying to do it that way. And what they did is they brought much more depth visually, and it has a great manic pace to it, and a drive. It's really infectious. It is a great adaptation, and I would also say my backup, well, not my backup, my runner-up, it has some of the same qualities, and that's Dan to Dan, which is an ongoing adaptation, but it's a split core. But the first core is airing now. But again, it's a manga that has really interesting visuals and an extremely distinct style. Would have been very hard to communicate literally through anime. So the anime decided, how do we capture this quality of this manic and zany and just breathless quality of the manga? How do we communicate that in an anime form? And again, they've made some very distinct stylistic changes and came up with something that produced something of the same vibe, the same feel. And I think that's rather brilliant. So I'm not always a huge fan of Science Saru. In fact, it's safe to say that I've rarely been a huge fan of Science Saru, but I think they're doing a phenomenal job with Dan to Dan. So that would definitely be my second pick for that category. But again, we both agree the Elusive Samurai definitely got a great adaptation. There's no question about that. Um, on that adaptation question, what is our most anticipated manga to anime adaptation coming up in 2025? And in this one, I think, it's one that's already been announced or at least leaked. So, for example, I could pick Kindergarten Wars here because that's been leaked, but I won't. That would be one of my backups because I think that has a chance to be, as I said in that show, the next big thing. But Witch Hat would be one I would call out here because I'm not a huge fan of the story, but the artwork is fantastic. So I'm very curious to see how that translates. My pick is going to be Gachi because it's a manga both you and I latched onto early on, right from the beginning. Hey, this is one to keep an eye on. This is really interesting. Started reading it from the first chapter. Both really like it. And then it's getting an adaptation from Bones, first of all, which Bones sets the floor. Once you hear Bones, okay, at the very least, it's going to be solid. It's going to look good. It's going to have a budget. Then there's another level a Bones series can go to. And looking at the previews for Gachi it really looks not only bonesy, which is lots of Sakuga and all that, but it looks really stylish and interesting and creative visually. And Gachi Akuta is a manga that has a very interesting visual aesthetic that has a chance to really explode on the screen. And I think it looks to me like Bones says, I'm the director that they put in charge of it is not a famous Bones name or anything, but it just looks like it has a bit of a Tachikawa Yuzuru vibe to it. The visuals, I have a suspicion that that could be when we talk about Dan to Dan or we talk about Heavenly Delusion as just wow, what a great adaptation. I think Gachi Yakuto would could be one we look back on and say, wow, this was a Hall of Famer. So that's my pick. How about you, Samu?
I do have a feeling that Gajakata, especially with Bones behind it, is going to get the adaptation that maybe people thought Sakamoto Days was going to get. Um, yeah,
And I know that hurts.
it does hurt. So like I would mention Sakamoto Days just because I want it to get an anime and I want it to be the best case scenario with what appears to be the case. So I hope it finds some success. Um, Other titles that I'm looking forward to, uh, One Dance. That's a breakdancing title that I've always had my eye on. I'll be very keen how that is adapted. Hopefully, it's not CGI heavy, but very very cool character designs at least for that one. City the animation, Kyoto Animation are coming back to the Nichijou mangaka adapting their next series, and yeah, I although I'm not familiar with City as I am with Nichijou, I that combination just makes me super super intrigued. Nichijou is an all timer for me, and funnily enough, it's one of those titles that you would think is probably a little bit niche with normies like people in the world that you ask, or do you like anime? What have you seen? But Nichijou is one that a lot of people I've talked to have seen and really love. It resonates with people, and if City the animation is 75% as good as Nichijou, which is in my top 15
Mm.
maybe of all time, that will be a very good contender for the best of the year.
Well, if you makes you feel any better, I know you have more to talk about. I like City better than Nichijou in manga form. So,
Oh well then yeah, we'll see. Yeah, I'm looking
mm.
forward to it. Go for it, Nakamura-kun, which is coming out next year as well. That's another one that I'm very curious how it's going to be adapted because at the moment there's only 2 volumes released. There's no
Yes, I
announcement that
noticed
it's a
that.
short, so I'm assuming it's going to be a full first core, and they might expand on more characters and storylines. That's just a very very cute retro esque rom com BL title that yeah, I think it will maybe surprise some people with its like the character that it has. It looks extremely sweet on the surface, and I think it is, but it also explores that the horny delusions of like a boy that age who has a crush on his very cute classmate that he's smitten with. So it's going to be a strange tonal balance, but the anime looks really colorful, really cute. So I'll be keeping an eye on that. But my main pick is going to be Kowloon Generic Romance, with the asterisks of if it is coming in 2025. I believe it is. Um,
Yes, it is. It is.
okay, good. In that case, yeah, that is my pick. Um, and I think that is also a very Enzo-esque series.
Yeah,
I think,
I liked her other series quite a lot after the
yeah,
rain, so I'm expecting to like Kowloon quite a bit.
yeah. Again, that's another one that has a slight twisted feel to it, while also playing into the romance element. And again, another Kowloon City relevant title. So lots of mystery, lots of
Mm.
weird stuff that happens. Yeah, I think it's going to throw people through a lot of loops when it does come out.
I think Nakamura-kun is going to be half length. I just have a feeling. I think
Yeah,
it's going to be like 11 minutes. That's my guess.
I mean that makes sense. If it is that, that is appropriate as well.
And it does look like straight out of the 90s. If you look at the visuals, it's
Yeah.
really it's serious throwback stuff.
So jumping from anime back to manga briefly. Uh, we've been we've had quite a few episodes this year. We've done 20 something
Mm.
episodes. Um, why don't we discuss what manga we've read in the podcast that we enjoyed the most?
Okay.
Particularly ones that we recommended to each other because we've done quite a few of them. Uh, I'll kick off. My favorite pick that you sent me was A Distant Neighborhood. Uh,
Okay.
like I said in that, I think the first volume, it's only 2 volumes, but the first volume super, super resonated with me in a way that just like clicked on all cylinders. I think I had my theories and slight disappointment in how it turned out, maybe in a much more simpler way than I expected. But it doesn't take away from how enjoyable um, I thought it was. I thought it was one of the better examples of the trope of an older man returning to his younger self and having to navigate the world with that knowledge. Very, very, very good.
Okay, I mean,
Yeah, I read that.
well, you know how I feel about it. My pick, I didn't have to grind too hard on this one. I liked I liked some of the series you recommended to me quite a bit, but Blank Canvas was the one that really resonated the most. My so-called artist journey. Um, that was the one that probably had the least kind of. There was no warts and all feeling for me. There was really nothing about that series that there were a couple things I would have liked to have seen differently, but for the most part, that was pretty much just a winner. And it made me cry. And I can count on one hand the number of manga that have made me cry in the last few years, and it did. And there's one particular scene that we both know. We talked about it on that episode that
Yeah.
just totally floored me. I mean, I was like, okay, call me in 2 days, I'll be fine. So yeah, that was the one of the ones that you recommended to me. That would be the one I would definitely choose as the standout of the year for me was Blank Canvas.
Okay, great. And
Yeah,
considering that's my
yeah,
favorite of all time, I'm glad to hear.
yeah. Well, yeah, that's not why I picked it, but I can see why it is for sure. Okay. Now we're gonna jump into some kind of fun speculative categories here. Best. So this one is an unlikely anime adaptation. We had this category in one of our a long ago podcast we did for LIA, and you picked Oku, which ended up getting an anime adaptation. So egg on your face. But this is unlikely anime adaptation that would make for potential anime of the year. I'll go first here, and I'm going to pick Otoyome Gatari, which is it's the most beautiful manga currently being written, and it has a great story, and it I think I think the story would resonate with people, and it doesn't have to be as beautiful as the manga to be beautiful. There's a big gap between it looks okay and it looks as great as it does when she draws it. And it could still be anywhere in that gap and still comfortably fall in the beautiful category. So I at this point, with every volume having been a big seller and absolutely not even a sniff of an adaptation, I consider that very unlikely. But that would be my top pick in this category for sure. I dream of the day that gets an anime adaptation. I think it could be wonderful. It could even be. I've often thought that Ghibli could make a film out of it, and it would. That's another potential. I mean, it could be easily a 2 or 3 core anime, and because the story is great, but you could do just the first arc or two in a movie form for like 2 hours, and Ghibli has the right aesthetic to do it justice. So that's a kind of a dream scenario for me. My backup pick in this is Spirit Circle because I just absolutely I love Spirit Circle beyond all. That's my artist journey. I know you didn't think much of it when we did it on the show, but I absolutely love that manga. It could so easily be a great 1 core anime. It only needs 1 core. I think it's unlikely at this point that it ever happens, but for the longest time, the mantra was Mizukami Satoshi, why is he never going to get an anime? And then he finally did get 2 of his series adapted. One of them was a complete dumpster fire, but that's okay. Sengoku Yoku has turned out to be very good. So that's my pick. It's Otoyome Gitari is my main pick, and then Spirit Circle would be my runner up. How about you?
I do feel like Spirit Circle is the more likely of the two. Who knows? If
Probably.
it could happen. Let's see. My pick. You mentioned Takehiko Inoue earlier when you spoke briefly about Vagabond.
Mm.
I'm going to go. I mean, Vagabond is so unlikely that it's just like a figment
Yeah.
of imagination. So
Yep.
I've gone like a shade less unrealistic, which would be his other ongoing series, Real.
Yeah.
That's one that he is publishing. I think he does it 4 chapters
Yep.
a year, which
Yep.
is enough to do just under 1 volume or 1 volume. So he's found a pretty consistent pace over the past 2 years. I caught up with it last year. I think it's great. I think it's not the level of Vagabond, but it's still a fantastic series. I think the material that they do have to cover and a good stopping point that I imagined when I read the series, I could see it being 3 or 4 cores and adapt most of what we had so far. I think if it got the adaptation that it could, it would be really moving. There's great potential if it ever does get animated.
The only quibble I'm going to make here is I think that is going to get an anime adaptation actually. Um,
Well,
but based on the fact that Slam Dunk the Slam Dunk movie, which he directed,
Yeah.
interestingly enough, was a monster hit. I mean, a huge hit. And while Slam Dunk is a bigger hit than Real, Real is not quite as big a hit as Vagabond or Slam Dunk in sales. It's still a pretty big hit as a manga. It sells a lot of volumes. It has sold a lot of volumes. And the fact that he made a somewhat semi-related thematically series, Slam Dunk is one of the biggest hits of all time and just had a huge film. I think Real, I would, if I was going to, it's not a slam dunk per se, no pun intended, but I think it's better than 50-50 that that gets an adaptation, actually.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, it's
We'll
possible.
see.
I think of his three series, it's maybe the least conventional in terms of the subject matter. Um,
I agree.
but yeah, I do think there is more chance of it getting adapted than Vagabond, just because
Yeah.
the art is great, but it's not Vagabond level. He doesn't have to put in the
Yeah.
same level of detail as he does with Real.
Yeah. Which is maybe one reason he's able to continue doing that one and he's not able to continue doing Vagabond, although he's also said that he feels kind of stuck on
Yeah.
the story with Vagabond too, which is kind of ironic as it's an adaptation of an existing book. But there you go.
Sticking with anime, we're going to go for more of a safer prediction for what could be announced in 2025. Um, I I was considering, like, there are a lot of series that feel like shoe-ins. Um, I did one that maybe it won't happen, but I feel like it's going to happen eventually. I mentioned it briefly as part of the Hitman Assassin titles. This is Marriage Toxin. That's a Jump Plus title that I've been reading since the first chapter. I've been keeping up with it. It's over 100 chapters now. It's a harem Hitman action series that's drawn really, really well and has a lot of different arcs that focus on different characters. The premise is this like conventionally attractive assassin from a big family is unable to get a lover, get a girlfriend, and he meets someone who is meant to be a target for him, who becomes his assistant in that sort of role. So it does set up this harem opportunity of him meeting all these new girls in this assassin world. Uh, it's exceeded my expectations in a lot of ways, and I think that the first chapter alone, I wouldn't actually want to spoil what happens there. If it ever does get an anime, I'd like it'd be interesting if you go in without knowing anything, because it very quickly like gives itself an identity which is uncommon for harem series, and the reason behind the main character doing what he does, and especially the other main character. um so yeah, I think while it's not my one of my favorites that I read ongoing, I think it's very
Okay. Then for me, uh, what I would consider a safe, I mean, when I see safe, I mean, I think I'm very, very confident we're going to see an anime announced in the coming year. I'm going with Yomi no Sugai, um, Demons of the Shadow Realm, which, I mean, honestly, it's Arakawa Hiromu, first of all, which meant it was probably always destined to get an anime adaptation anyway. But now we're seeing the sales of the manga really kind of explode. It's trending up in a big way. It's starting to get some awards attention, and it's far enough now. It has enough chapters that it can probably happen. I'm going with Demons of the Shadow Realm. I think that's I think that's pretty likely to get I would be surprised if that doesn't get an announcement in 2025. That's my pick.
being
And
so.
I was gonna say that would have been my one of my runners up in the next big thing
Yeah.
category too. I think that has a chance to be pretty explosive. And I would have been happily picked Kindergarten Wars here too, except that's already been leaked. So that's I didn't feel right taking that because it's already been semi confirmed. Okay, I'll be looking out for Marriage Toxin. That's an interesting one. Now, the next category was kind of a one I picked as a kind of a fun miscellaneous at the end is old school manga we want to see illogically rebooted. Um, so it's been a trend in recent years of like really old manga or manga that actually got anime decades ago getting rebooted or either adapted for the first time or having old anime rebooted in the 2020s. And this is something we've really seen a lot of in the last couple of years. So I thought it would be fun to touch base on this. And I'm gonna kind of do two categories, subcategories for me. I'm gonna go reboot of an old anime and then just a manga which is seemingly old and out of the blue you'd never think would get an anime getting an anime. So my reboot of an old anime is Touch because by many standards, such as TV ratings, it was the most popular anime of all time. But it's been 40 years almost, and it certainly could use a reboot. And I mean, the logical time to do it would have been leading into either the first or second season of Mix. But I think it would be a pretty safe bet to be popular. I'm kind of surprised it's never happened, frankly, given what a massive cultural phenomenon Touch is in Japan, and still to this day, really is a massive presence in Japanese culture. But talking of so just plucking a series out of the blue that we never would have thought would get an anime to get one. My runners up here are Sand Chronicles, which is one of my early most beloved rom-coms, even though the one I picked, it was a triangle and I knew I was backing a losing horse and they did lose. But that's okay. I still love the series. Yugami-kun, which we've already covered. Yugami doesn't have any friends. Maybe it's not old enough to really qualify, but I think at this point it's a long shot to get an anime. Of course, Vagabond. But we've kind of done that to death. So my pick here is A Distant Neighborhood, which is a very influential and very popular, well-known, well-known seinen series. One of the icons of the demographic. It's actually already gotten a live action film in French from a Belgian director, Quartier Longtemps, but it's never gotten an anime and never gotten even a shout of an anime actually. And in fact, you could do it easily as a 2-hour film because it's only 2 volumes. I think that would work fine. Or you could easily do it as a one-core anime. So it's critically beloved. It's a legend. It should have been an anime before now, but it probably never will be. So that's my number one pick in this category is A Distant Neighborhood. Throwing it over to you, Simon. What's your pick?
I also could see that A Distant Neighborhood could get a 2-hour movie adaptation. I feel like that'd be most appropriate. Um, yeah, I would love to see that. I've actually not yet watched the live action adaptation, the Belgian film, but yeah, I might check that out now. My pick for an old school manga getting rebooted is one that I have mentioned already. It's Barefoot Gen. This did get 2 animated films, I believe 3 live action films, and also a miniseries. But it's never been fully adapted beyond those first volume or the first couple of volumes, which are admittedly they're like the most hard hitting, intense depictions of what happened on the ground in Hiroshima in 1945. But now that I've read the whole series, which is about 10 volumes, but they were quite long volumes, so it's probably something more like 14. I feel like there is potential. I would love to see it getting a full adaptation of the entire story. Again, I don't think it's likely, at least if they're not going to uncensor some of the things that they say within the series. But yeah, which I believe leads to our final category, Enzo, which we
The
don't
big one.
know, we haven't discussed yet what we're going to say for this. Um, that category is the manga that we think our counterpart should read. And maybe that'll mean that we will pick it up next year when we recommend to each other, or just something that for me, I'm quite curious to get your take on this series. I don't know if it was one that you thought I would pick, but I'm going to say Chainsaw Man.
Okay.
So the reason why I say that is, for one, we did both cover the first season together on LIA, and I think you enjoyed it, but you didn't love it. And
Yes, fair to say.
since then, the anime's been quite slow in getting new news and adaptation going forward. It looks like we're going to get an announcement for the next story arc getting a movie, and then I believe that will set up for concluding part one with one more core of a season. Part two of the manga is still being published, and I think might end next year. I can see it potentially being in wrap up stage right now. The reason why I say it'd be interesting to have you read it, even if we did it split it between part one and part two, is the fandom reaction between the two parts and what Fujimoto has changed and his focus has changed. The sales for part two have kind of collapsed in a way that are disappointing, but not super surprising given the direction he's taking the story. I could be completely wrong, but I also, if we ever discussed it, I can see you resonating with the second part a lot more than what the first part does. I think it's messier and less conventional, and just goes in directions that are even more unlikely than the first part, which I think is great. And I think that when we get to the adaptation of the first part, the end of the first part, that final stretch of episodes, if they give it the adaptation it deserves, those are going to be insane. They'll like rock the internet. So yeah, I'm just curious to get your take because the anime might be so far off before we get to any of the really good
Hmm.
stuff, in my opinion.
Interesting pick. Hmm.
Hmm.
All right. Now, I let me say for the record that I took this category more seriously than any of the other categories, quite frankly, because I think it's kind of a big meatball considering the year we've put in on this show. And I wrote down five different choices and did not know when we started recording this episode which one I was going to pick. I said when my time comes, I'm going to look at my sheet and I'm going to pick which one of these feels right. And I will say for the record, that's something of the difference between Samu and me because he could never do that. It would absolutely drive him crazy. I think it's fair to say. Whereas with me, it's kind of a fun thing to do. Um, I'm gonna say Rurouni Kenshin, um,
Okay.
because um, Samu is considers himself, I think, quite rightly, a Weekly Shonen Jump maven. I mean, he's an aficionado of the magazine. He reads it cover to cover. Um, this is one of the iconic titles in the history of Weekly Shonen Jump. It's, in my opinion, one of the three best series in the history of Weekly Shonen Jump. Um, there are other issues that have arisen in recent years, and that's kind of a buy in or buy out. And I think we have to just kind of stipulate, okay, we're going to set that aside for the moment and just talk about the merits of the work on the page. For someone who considers, who has the dedication to the magazine and its history that you have, I think not having read Rurouni Kenshin is a pretty big gap in the resume. But above and beyond that, I think it's an absolutely fantastic manga. It is legitimately completely deserving of the status it has in Japan with multiple anime movies, anime OVAs, a full anime season, hopefully a full anime reboot, massively successful live action film series, reboot in manga form now running in Jump Square. I mean, it's deserving of its status as one of the legendary titles of all time. And as someone who loves Jump as much as you do, I think you should. I think you should read this series, and I think it should be part of your vocabulary. So that's why, against some other very very stiff competition of series that I really thought hard. Okay, this would be a really good choice. I'm picking Rurouni Kenshin. That's my pick for you.
Interesting. I also think that's not maybe what I thought you were going to pick.
May I
Yeah.
ask what you thought I was going to pick, and I'll tell you what I thought you were going to pick. And except I don't really know what I thought you were going to pick, but I am curious since you clearly had an idea in my case.
Yeah, I didn't know all.
Okay.
I don't know if I had an idea, but I would have placed a bet that it was some shorter seinen title that you're really affectionate
Okay.
for. If not, maybe Yona of the Dawn.
That was on my list. Those were both on my short list for the record.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
Yep.
Are you? Do
Yep.
you have anything that you thought I was going to say?
To be honest with you, I was kind of I thought you would pick something. Well, in hindsight, I kind of in my vague idea in my head, I thought it would be a shonen title, because shonen seems to be the area where we overlap quite a bit. You know, you tend I love some josei series like Akatsuki no Yona. You love some seinen series, but generally speaking, we've tended to overlap the most in terms of shonen. So I
Yeah,
figured you'd pick a shonen for me. I figured you'd pick one that was pretty influential, that you thought it was an oversight that I hadn't read. So in that sense, Chainsaw Man definitely checks both those boxes. I didn't have a specific series in mind, but it isn't far off from the broad categories I thought you might gravitate towards. Yeah, yeah, for sure.
I mean, funnily enough, my second choice, which it would be a much more dangerous pick, because I think you just might not like it, even though it'd be interesting to discuss it for what I believe the merits are that even general anime manga fandom doesn't give it credit. Is I would be really curious to go through Bleach with you.
Mm.
I do feel
Well,
like I don't know if that's why I say I don't know if it just isn't your cup of tea, but I think there is more depth to the series that people don't give it credit for. I think for a lot of people it just falls into the category of it's a cool action series, with a cool action battle title, which is true.
interesting.
But I think there is definitely more to what TT Kubo does with the series. Those some
Well,
like
there's plenty of future episodes to come. So
yeah,
knock wood. So you never know what the future might bring. And on that note, I will say it's been a great year of doing the
yeah.
podcast with you. I've had a lot of fun. I'm looking forward to many more interesting episodes to come. Manga continues to be a thriving and creatively very vibrant art form. My early read on anime in 25 is it's going to be a down year. That's my feeling, and that's what the tea leaves are telling me. And I've gotten pretty good at reading them at this point. So I'm thinking 25 may be a little bit of a lax year for anime. So that may be a year for me to even more deeply throw myself into manga. So I've appreciated sharing these perspectives with you. The times we've agreed, we've disagreed. It's been a great year. I've really enjoyed doing the podcast with you, and I look forward to many more to come. Thank you so much for being a part of it, and thank you so much for being the one to suggest this to me in the first place. I think it was a great idea, and I'm really glad we're doing it.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, totally agree. It's been great to contrast our opinions, but then also knowing what we knew about each other's taste play into that as
Mm,
well.
mm.
Yeah, there's not many people I get to talk in detail about all these series and potentially recommend them to others as well.
Yeah, and just for the record, I think it's been great to confirm that my taste is indeed better than yours. So, um, uh,
Likewise.
uh, on that note, I will say thank you now to all of our everyone who follows this series, who's listened to it on one of our various podcast outlets, who watches the episodes on YouTube. I hope you've enjoyed it. You have many ways of communicating with us. With me directly, you can do it through Blue Sky or Twitter. I'm on both, or commenting on the posts on the website or on YouTube. Leave comments on the videos. We love to hear input from you guys on what you'd like to hear more of, or just general feedback on the episodes themselves. So please keep those coming. We did do one. Spoiler: we did do one. I don't remember if that's aired yet, actually, but we did do one patron choice episode. And I think it's fair to say that we'd like to do more viewer choice episodes in the future. So I think you could probably look forward to that happening. Um, but that's a wrap on 2024 in My Taste is Better Than Yours, and our look at manga and a little bit of anime too. So thank you very much for participating. We hope you'll like, we hope you'll comment, we hope you'll subscribe, but I also hope you'll have a happy new year. Samu, I'll say happy new year to you. And as I know, I've been discouraged from talking about the weather, but I always sign off the same way. And it's appropriate now. It's December. Everyone, I'd like to say, as always, if you do nothing else, please heed these words from me and stay frosty. Happy New Year. Akemashite omedetou. Talk to you guys soon. Thanks a lot.
Bye bye.